الرجاء بس من جميع ضيوفنا الكرام إبقاء الميكروفونات مغلقة.
ترفيهية غير المستشفيات وعيادات.
حاضرين يا ريهام، حاضرين.
شكرا جزيلا، يعطيكم العافية.
سمعا وطاعة.
خلاص اغلقيهم انت بالقانون.
تمام. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today, and welcome to the 26th session of Majlis Khonji. Please allow me to introduce our guest for this session, Nabila Amri. Nabila is an executive coach with 10 years of experience in teaching and 5 years of entrepreneurship. As an English language instructor and lecturer, she managed most difficult, diverse classrooms of individuals with different backgrounds and abilities, and managed to change their mindsets and dramatically improve their levels. Nabila managed her own business and has been part of business events, seminars, and initiatives supporting and mentoring startups and women in business. She is a certified coach and trainer and is a board member of ICF Oman chapter and can help coach individuals and train groups in leadership skills, communication skills, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, personal growth, cultural diversity, self-awareness, and SME development. Welcome to Majlis Khonji, Nabila. And also I would like to welcome Qatra Nada Khalil Khonji in moderating this session today with us. Over to you, Qatra Nada, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. On behalf of Majlis Khonji, I would like to welcome everyone, and I'd like to welcome Coach Nabila Amri. The subject is very interesting to all of us joining today. Living, studying, working with various cultures in our day-to-day lives, whether in schools or workplaces, is very important to allow us to interact and live in harmony with people from all over the world. I would like to hand over to Coach Nabila to further learn and understand.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to present today. It's a pleasure to see this great group here. I see some familiar faces today. Mr. Ahmed Al-Amri, Mr. Mohammed Al-Kharousi, Helena, I think, Ustaz Simon. I was with them actually during Tanfidh time, so it's an honor to have them in my presentation as well today. And cultural diversity is a very interesting topic, and it's a passion that I have actually because of my background with teaching and living abroad. I think it's really important to understand how to manage cultural diversity in our organizations. So I think I can start sharing my screen. It says host disabled attendees screen sharing. If you can just enable it for me, please.
Enabled, yeah. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Riham. I'll just close that, make it small. Right, so although you've introduced me, I'll give a brief introduction about myself as well. Let me just close my camera to make it more, to make the network better. So I have a master's in business administration from Holt International Business School, certified trainer from International Training Standards, and I have a practitioner's diploma in executive coaching from the Academy of Executive Coaches. And as you have heard, I'm a board member of the ICF Oman chapter, and I've been part of the 10,000 Women Entrepreneurs Program that has been sponsored by the US Embassy of Oman to go and take an entrepreneurship program at Harvard Kennedy School. A little bit of my work experience, I'm an English language second teacher by profession, but also a business owner. I ran my business for 5 years, and during this period, I've been part of Business Women Committee at the Ministry of Chamber of Commerce and Tanfidh, as I just mentioned. I've been one of the leaders to lead the initiative by the Embassy of the Netherlands, Khutwa Initiative, which was to support women in business and women at work. At the moment, I'm part of the Not Alone campaign that is also sponsored by the Whispers of Serenity Clinic and I am mentoring SMEs at the moment, which is a program called Mulhimat by Tawasul, sponsored by BP. And I have just joined actually Al-Harib Medical Center as a collaborator with them, and I've seen that Mr. Al-Harib himself is here today, no, Muhammad is here today. So let me just start with the first slide about cultural diversity. It's a topic that not only is interesting, but it's an important area to understand at a deeper level. Many organizations today are multinational, which means they are multicultural, but are not necessarily aware of that. So they have employees of different nationalities and maybe dealing with their international offices or maybe receiving them as guests from time to time. So knowing more about them at a deeper level would make relationships better. So we might see them as race, gender, or religion, and might have an idea of their culture and tradition, but do we really understand them? This is when we can really ask ourselves, what is cultural diversity? Cultural diversity is more than that. It is perception, it's habits, it's how we communicate with each other, it's how we live, it is deeper values that we own and what we believe in and how we behave. And I would like to illustrate or show you this on the famous cultural iceberg, which, you know, we have icebergs of many kinds, but this one specifically shows us the cultural iceberg. What you see on the surface floating is actually rooted with a very strong base underneath that surface. And that's only 10% of what describes who the person really is. So you see the person as maybe their sense of fashion, you see them as gender, you see their race, maybe the type of food that they eat, you probably understand the kind of music that they listen, and what the religion that they carry with them. However, the rest of it, which is 90%, is what the person really is underneath the surface. So their values, beliefs, the perception, how they process things, how they solve problems, this is what makes them who they really are. And diversity is everything that's so different from one person to another that includes both the surface and what's underneath. Now, when we think of body language, so when you travel to different countries and you have people calling you with one finger, for example, and I can show you this now, I think if I have my camera open, people will call you like this. And for us, this can be really, you know, shameful or maybe rude as our perception as Arabs. And some other cultures, like in Italy, for example, they might wink to say hello to you. And for us as well, as a culture, we think maybe they're trying to get to us closer in a very disrespectful way. So to understand these different cultures and how they communicate is really important to avoid misunderstanding. Another sign that we have in this part of the world is the weight sign. This means weight. However, in other cultures, again, like in Italy, for them, they take it as a very rude, maybe it means, I'm going to show you in a minute, just wait, it's very rude to use this sign language to them. So it's very important for us to understand, you know, the body language of other cultures and many other things. So we can define culture as being deeply rooted patterns of values, customs, attitudes, and the beliefs that distinguish between us and another group. And I would like to show this as well with this beautiful tree here. It's deeply rooted like a tree. So underneath, you see how the tree has been formed with strong roots. They're deep, they're formed, they're difficult to remove. And, you know, with all the nutrients that has created what we see from the outside. And what is outside, what is above, is the color of the tree, the type of the leaf, maybe the smell of the tree, the shape of the tree. So this is exactly how it is with also people or with different cultures. So subconsciously, it guides our behavior and influences our sense of belonging and motivates us to work effectively at work. And this is what we'd like to believe. And many organizations believe that if we can if we can create an environment for people so that they feel a sense of belonging, then they will be motivated and therefore they will perform better at work. Now, I would like to also give you an example when you're traveling. We like to travel. I'm sure a lot of you like traveling. But after some time, you feel like you need to go back home. You miss your comfortable environment. And sometimes you may feel uncomfortable in a different country because it is not your environment, it's not your culture, everything is different. And as soon as it lands to a nearing country, even the UAE or Qatar or any of those countries that are surrounding us in the GCC, you start feeling that sense of, I'm starting to be at home. I really feel like I'm getting home, and you start feeling comfortable. You're not afraid anymore of the security or anything like that because you feel you're back home. So in a recent survey from The Economist, 90% of executives found that 90% of executives over 68 countries found it difficult and challenging they cited cross-cultural management as their top challenge, basically. And these challenges included values, tradition, habits, perception, and communication, which contributes to the behavior of the one individual. So all of these aspects on the left side creates a behavior of one person. And that behavior basically is action, how we act and how we react to certain situations. And I would like to emphasize on communication styles, specifically when it comes to behavior, because communication is almost everything when it comes to leadership style, when it comes to emotional intelligence. Communication is a big thing, especially in a working environment and even with your own family, your friends, and anybody you know outside. So when you look at these 4 types of communication styles, let's take formality, for example. Formality, when it comes to a country like Oman, we have a lot of manners and etiquettes when it comes to dealing with guests, for example, or even our own family. Like Eid is coming, but of course we have a lockdown, but during normal Eid, if anybody visits you, there's a lot of manners and a lot of etiquette, and the way we greet each other is very different. While you take another country, that is not like us, and I would like to say maybe like the US, it can be very casual. It doesn't need to be so much of etiquette because it's a different culture, and to them this is just a normal thing, and maybe we will not be able to understand if we never learned about them. When it comes to perception, it's about how important it is to that culture, and how do we understand the other cultures. So how is it important for us as Arabs, for example, to be perceived in a certain way? How we dress, how we talk, how we react to certain things. It's very important for us to be perceived that we're, with manners and etiquette, especially when we go out. We cannot just go out dressed very, very casually. This is how important it is to us over here. But how do we understand people that sort when it comes to different cultures, the way that they dress or the way that they talk? So it's important to understand. You may see people traveling in flip-flops or they're dressed in shorts, and for us, it's not normal. So perception is a big thing as well when it comes to different cultures. Then you have the hierarchical side of the organization, or aspects of the organization. Is that organization run horizontally or vertically? So how is it in terms of power? Is it from top to down, or everything is equal and fair and divided equally within the organization? When it comes to time as well, and specifically I can say meeting deadlines, which is a huge thing in this part of the world, that I would say it depends on the organization. I think a lot of organizations today understand that meeting deadlines is very important. However, we know within our own country here that we have some cultures that do not understand what a deadline is. Be it a tailor, it doesn't have to be even in the organization. So it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. What does it mean if I say tomorrow? Does it mean day after tomorrow? When it comes to meetings, does a person take it flexible? And I say today's meeting is at 10:30, but they arrive at 11 o'clock. What kind of perception do they have when it comes to time and when it comes to promises? So with different cultures or other cultures, the time is a big thing to meet a deadline, to meet your promise, and to be at meeting on time. I would like to give an example on this as well about my own daughter, and I hope she doesn't hear me now because she's here now. She studies in the UK. And in the first year of her university, the foundation year basically, she was finding it hard to meet the deadlines. Although she studied in a private school and she did IB and a deadline was very important, but over here teachers were a little bit more lenient in terms of, if she says, can I hand in my assignment tomorrow? The teacher will say, okay, fine. When she did that in the UK, the teacher will tell her fine, and then the teacher will write or in her report will record that she submitted it late. And she could not understand why this was happening. So when I spoke to her, I said to her, a deadline is a deadline no matter what, even if she gave you permission to submit it late, but she has to record it that you submitted late. And it was very difficult for her to understand that idea. And now she's used to it. She's in her third year. She's used to it now. So these are the different kinds of perception that we have when it comes to time. I would like to show you this scale or communication scale, which is the role of context scale. So we can see from this illustration that communication differs from country to country. Let's take Japan, that's Korea. Let's take Japan, for example, in comparison to the US, which is far on the left side, which is low context. People on high context on this scale means they don't like to be direct when it comes to communication. So if they have to communicate, they maybe rely on body language, they rely on facial expressions. They don't like a lot of verbal communication to say what is on top of their head. While we take the US, for example, maybe somebody will say what is on top of their head, and that is fine, because for them, it is like, I have to tell you what I think. But when it comes to Japan, for them, it is shameful. And this is actually almost similar when it comes to our society here as well, or our culture. It is the same kind of idea. And if you try to be too direct to a person, they might misinterpret you as being rude, unfortunately. And people in the middle here are more in between. So it really depends on the situation and what happens, who they're talking to. And then they decide whether I can be verbally or just body language. When we take leadership style, for example, again, it's on a scale. If I take Japan as well, this time the US is somewhere in the middle, but Japan and United Kingdom are right in the, Germany and United Kingdom are in the middle. And then we've got the Netherlands. We have somebody here from Holland, which can tell us if this is true or not. This is a scale. And we've got Sweden and Switzerland. So when we take the leadership style, for example, Japan, they are more on the hierarchical side. So it's more leadership in terms of top to bottom. And when it comes to Netherlands, Sweden, and Switzerland, they're more in terms of the flat, egalitarian way of working in their offices or their organizations. So imagine taking a person from Sweden and put them in Japan without understanding each other or without understanding that leadership style of that country. It will create a big problem because they will not understand why this person is trying to be so high up above me, while this is work. We can be equal, we can understand, we can share, we can collaborate, we can work as a team. And vice versa, if you take a Japanese who was used to be led by a powerful, high up hierarchical source, they might not get used to it very fast or might even refuse it. So let's take at evaluating feedback, negative feedback. And I find this to be really, really interesting and important, specifically in this part of the world. So let's take Saudi Arabia. I should have put Oman here as well. Let's take Saudi Arabia, for example. When it comes to giving negative feedback to this part of the world, it can be taken as something being shameful or very negative, even though it's negative feedback, but it's supposed to be constructive. But they don't perceive it that way. They perceive it as being like it's failure, I've been shamed, and it's not nice. While you take a country like the Netherlands, for them, giving negative feedback is very important because you need to learn from your mistakes. So again, if you take these two people together and put them together in one organization or in each other's countries without explaining the differences in their cultures, then you can have a conversation that goes like, Saudi Arabia will say, how can you say that to me? That's very rude, it's shameful. Who do you think you are? I'm trying my best. Why are you saying these things? And we've seen that happening here a lot as well. But vice versa, if you take the person from the Netherlands and you don't tell them what they've done wrong, and then later on they came to find out that you fixed it behind their back because you didn't really want to put them into shame, they'll say, you should have told me. How will I know? I need to do my job the right way. This is not the way to go when it comes to work. How am I going to progress? So evaluating negative feedback is very critical in this part of the world, but in another part of the world, like these countries over here, it's critical to actually be given in a positive way. This is called the culture onion that I've taken from the Hofstede Insight. The Hofstede Insight have posted this year, 2020, the culture onion. And the culture onion is basically with the values in the middle is, so the practices of every organization, starting with the values of that organization, and then they have the overlying or the 3 layers of their practices within the organization. So every organization will have its own rituals, will have its own heroes, will have its own symbols. Now, when we talk about rituals, so for example, if we talk about it in a normal context and not an organizational context, it's like how we greet people. Do we greet shaking hands? Do we greet kissing? Do we greet with our noses? These are the kind of rituals that happen within a certain culture. So how do we greet and meet? Then we have our roles, models of society. We can easily say, so a role model of society would be somebody like Mother Teresa. We all know that she's, a huge role model for helping people. We can take Steve Jobs as a role model for being very innovative and creative. And there are also role models like heroes where you will put a person as a role model of somebody who did something wrong. So you will always tell, as an example, your children, don't do that because somebody did that and got into trouble. So that person will always be a role model of the wrong thing. We set an example about them. And then we have things like gestures and images. And I could easily say, when it comes to gestures and images, things like flags, food, colors, they are symbols that relate to our own culture. So if I say spices, we immediately link that, for example, to India. If I say the red, white, and blue, maybe we relate that to the United States. If I say pizza, immediately we relate that to Italy. If I say pyramid, we relate that to Egypt. And these are the kind of images or symbols that we relate to a certain culture or a certain society. So an organization normally would have these things around them that is linked to their own culture and their own country. And so the people who are not part of our society need to learn hard how to relate to these 3 layers, rituals, heroes, and symbols, in order to feel they are part of organization. Or we need to put a little bit of what they have into our own culture. Let's take, as an example that I created, is, so here, if I go back a little bit, you will see it is just one onion with different layers, and we have one practice from one culture. But and then if you take as an example, you have practice A, practice B, practice C. There is no way if you have 3 different practices in one organization, they will clash and they will not work well if they are different and not interlinked with each other. But, and then if you look at it as culture A, culture B, culture C, again, so this is what I'm trying to show you here is that when you have 3 different cultures in one organization without understanding each other's practices, each other's culture, each other's beliefs and values, then it can become very, very chaotic. I would just like to give another example. I like giving examples because you can relate to it. Korean courtesy. So 3 Omanis, I think there were more than 3 Omanis. My husband was one of them. They were sent to Korea for work. And by the end of their project or agreement with the company in Korea, they were invited to go for dinner. And as any other country, like we do here, we would like to invite people over to see the, the culture. We maybe take them to a special Omani restaurant. And this is what happened over there. They took them to a Korean restaurant. And Koreans are similar to us when it comes to seating. So you go, before going in, you have to remove your shoes. You're seated on the floor respectively. And to their shock, 3 ladies walked in, and each lady was sat beside each gentleman. And the Omanis were kind of surprised and thought, what's going on here? But the way the Korean courtesy works is that we feed you. So we not only give you our food, but we feed you our food. So obviously the Omanis felt this is really embarrassing. This is against our culture. We cannot accept this. No, because it is aib. It is against all our religion. And when you say no to them, they feel like, why are you saying no? Because this is courtesy from our side. So the Korean made a mistake by not understanding the Omani culture. And this is what can happen in situations like, a simple setting like going to a restaurant, for example. So how do you interlink these different cultures in one workplace is the question that I will leave for you. So let's come to cultural competency. And cultural competency is about your ability to interact with people from different cultures. How do you work with people who don't share your language? Sometimes it's very hard to communicate with different languages because even though I speak English, but maybe the way that I say things is different from an English language speaking country. And communication might sound a little bit different, and it might be perceived in a different way. How can you work with people who have different holidays? We have Eid here. They will be enforced to celebrate Eid with us. They will get the holiday with us when it comes to Eid celebrations. Then there's other holidays like Christmas, there's Diwali, there's a lot of things. So we're not saying that we have to celebrate all of the holidays of the different cultures in a company, but to appreciate it when they actually ask for a day off because this is their holiday, this is their special holiday. This is how you make them motivated. They will feel that you understand them. They feel that you can relate to them because they're relating first to be related to our kind of holidays. If you cannot give them a day off, then at least celebrate with them by handing them, with chocolates or anything, a gift, or just merely sending them a message saying happy holiday would be more than enough, because that can actually open a lot of conversation to start to understand about their cultures. So, and this takes us to the ability to accept those different cultures, their lifestyles, their beliefs, their values, and their way of thinking. And the ability to understand the different management styles. There's definitely different management styles across different cultures, and it sometimes can be stressful for somebody who has been used to working in a different management style, and they're trying really hard to work, and we might see them as people who are not really competent in their work, but it's actually the style that they're not used to. So it's not about taking a test about a different culture and understanding it and passing the test, but it's about examining your own thoughts and feelings about that culture, and it's about developing your own cross-cultural skills. So we've heard that organizations do create an organizational culture, but an organizational culture is about branding your company or organization so that everybody follows that same process, about the same job ethics, the same KPIs. This really talks about understanding each other's culture on a deeper level. So the Diversity Training University created a competency which is about awareness, attitudes, knowledge, and skills. And so basically, when you start testing yourself, so you have to understand yourself in terms of awareness. Are you really aware of what you're thinking of? So if you see a different culture in front of you, the way that they talk, the way that they eat, or the way that they dress, what goes on in your thoughts, and how do you react to it in that minute? How do you react when it comes to different cultures? If somebody from the United Kingdom is in front of you in comparison to somebody from Malaysia, how do you react to these two different nationalities and different cultures? Have you noticed yourself? Are you aware of your actions at that moment? In terms of attitude, what kind of cultural biases do you have towards a specific culture? Do you trust and believe every culture? If you have a key to your storeroom that has a lot of important documents, and you have an Omani employee in front of you that has only joined 2 months ago, and then you have I don't know, somebody from Somalia, for example, who has been in the company for more than 5 years. You know them, but this key is really important to you. Who do you look at to give that key to, and why? Are you aware of your cultural biases? Do you choose the Omani, or do you actually go for your real instinct because you know this person is trustworthy, they've been here for so many years, and I know I can trust them? And then when it comes to your own knowledge, so beliefs and values and your prejudices, when we have certain beliefs and values, so as a Muslim, for example, I might have different beliefs and values in comparison to somebody who's a Christian. Do I hold any prejudices against them? If they invite me over for their Christmas party, will I say no or yes? What kind of thoughts will go into my head? Is it because of what I know, or is it because of that I'm blocking everything just because I know it? Or are you going to try and be against your own prejudices, or when it comes to religion specifically? And then there's skills. So this is something that wraps up awareness, attitude, and knowledge. If you are aware of yourself in terms of your attitude and your knowledge, you will be able to create your own skills in terms of how you communicate with different cultures in a fair way. So we can easily say that cultural competency in brief is how you effectively interact with people from different cultures, but it depends on how aware you are of your own culture. Are you really aware of your own culture, or is it just something you are used to and you are on auto mode without even realizing what you're doing? I came across this recently, actually, called cultural baggage, and I find it to be really interesting. We all hold cultural baggage, apparently, and it's also got to do with awareness, our behavior, and our skills. Now, what does it mean to have cultural baggage? When you are brought up with certain values, that creates your certain behaviors because you're that person. Again, I will give an example as a Muslim. So I know as a Muslim, I'm not supposed to do certain things, or I have to do certain things. I have to dress in a certain way or behave in a certain way. And these create a kind of baggage that in the back of our heads, it's always there, which is not a bad thing because we have to remember who we are. But again, coming back to the same example as when somebody invites you to their to their religious ceremony, for example. Will you go because they invited you, or will you say no because you feel it is against your culture and your religion? That person may be intended to invite you because they like you, they feel that you're part of their team, they respect you, and their initiative to invite you was only merely for respect, and they want to show you who they are. So they've actually opened up to you to show you who they are. But us, we block it because we feel, no, I can't do this because this is so against my culture. It's not going to change you. If you really know who you are, it will not change you. So this is one example of cultural baggage that we may have. The essential cross-cultural skills that we need is teamwork, being aware of ourselves, to understand ourselves and our own culture and understand other people's cultures, to be curious. When you're curious, it shows interest. It means you are interested to understand who they are, you are interested to know who they are, and that's how teamwork happens and collaboration happens. We notice a lot of times if you are in a canteen, for example, office canteen, that different cultures will form groups together. When I had to go for that 10,000 Women Entrepreneurs Program in the US, we were all women from the MENA region. And what happened, and this is something that I noticed as I sat back at that time, that was about 6 years ago, and I noticed that we started forming groups. So all the GCC ladies became close, and all the ladies from Sham, they became closer to each other. So we started forming groups, which is not supposed to happen. We were all there for one purpose. We were all ladies and we were all Arabs, but we still joined hands with Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, instead of joining with Lebanon and the other countries. And the most important thing is to communicate. And this is one essential skill that people should have within an organization. So developing an understanding and awareness of different cultures will help everyone, not only just managers, but everyone from different backgrounds to interact more effectively. And I would like to introduce this culture map scale, which is a tool used to measure more than one dimension. It was created by Erin Mayer, who has a book actually called The Culture Map. And she's a professor at the INSEAD in France. Sorry, so I will go back to I will give this first before showing you the scale. This is a lecture that Olivier sent to Erin. Olivier had gone to China with his European group to work over there, and the European group, they were that included France and Germans. Now the Asians complained that the Europeans were very harsh at the way that they spoke. They were too direct. So Olivier tried to coach the European group and told them to calm down because the way the Asians work is differently. But to his surprise, later on, within the European group, the French complained, the Chinese complained about the Japanese, that the Japanese were very slow in decision making and they were taking time to do their work. And the Japanese were complaining about the Chinese that they did not think things over properly before making decisions. And this is as the same example as I was talking about. I mean, although we are different, but we're the same in terms of the, when we think about the GCC people. And this is a skill that Erin told Olivier to use. And it's basically, it calculates or measures the different scales of different countries. So the shock here was that when you look at Germany and France, in communication, if you remember the first scale I showed you in terms of high context and low context, Japan is definitely on the right side because they prefer to communicate more on facial expressions and body language. And although Chinese are the same, but they're a little bit better than the Japanese. And the surprising thing here is that France is also more on the right side, although we perceive them as people who are very, very direct, but in comparison to Germans, they're not as direct as, as the Germans. When it comes to giving negative feedback, you can see clearly here that Japan does not like being given negative feedback, and Chinese are a little bit better than Japanese, but the French and the Germans would give negative feedback, but the Germans are more direct in terms of that. If we go down to avoiding confrontations, you can see that the Japanese avoid confrontations, which solidifies this high context here. But when it comes to Germans, they also somehow avoid confrontation, surprisingly, although they give negative feedback. And the French are more confrontational than the Germans. So you can see it really depends on the context. It depends on the situation. Is it just giving, being direct in the way that you speak because they're more preserved? But when it comes to giving negative feedback, they would rather give you the negative feedback because to them it's more constructive. When it comes to, I'm looking for the time here. When it comes to the timing, you can see clearly here the problem that they had, that the Chinese are more flexible in terms of their time. So these are the kind of people who will say tomorrow, but it's actually after 1 week. And when it comes to the Japanese, they're more on schedule. They meet deadlines, they're specific. And the Germans are even more on the linear side of the time. There's another measurement, which is the Hofstede's cultural dimension, and you can find this on the Hofstede's website, that measures 6 dimensions. And the first one is power distance. So this one measures the degree to which society will accept power to be distributed unequally. So do I accept to have somebody higher in hierarchy to have more power over me? Or am I more on a flat level in terms of hierarchy? So a high PDI society will accept an unequal hierarchical order, and the low one, just like Sweden and the Netherlands, as the example we've seen before, will distribute the power equally and demand justifications of inequalities of power. When we look at the individuality versus collectivism, this is the strength that ties people together as a society. So I remember I read about the Indonesians, for example. They will stand up for each other. So if they're not happy about something in an organization, one person is not happy, then everybody will go on strike. And we've seen that in many other societies. They will stand up for each other, and they're not individualists, they're more on the collective side of people. If somebody has been given a promotion and they've only joined a year, and there was another person who has joined 10 years before, that person who has been given the promotion will probably refuse it and say the other person deserves it better because he's been here longer than I have. While other societies who are individualists will take it because it's about me, it's about my career, I don't care about everybody else, and this is some societies that are like that. So the high score with weak interpersonal connection will be less responsible for others. When it comes to masculine versus femininity, the masculine society is competitive, like the Japanese, they're very competitive. And it represents how successful they are. Everything is about achievement, everything is about being a hero, and they would expect you to give them material rewards. While the feminine society is a total opposite, you know, they go with the flow and are very modest in life. And when it comes to uncertainty avoidance, which is the measurement of tolerance of the uncertainty, how well can people cope with uncertainty and ambiguity? Again, Japanese are not doing well in this part because they try to control, do not accept unorthodox behavior. So anything that is against their culture, their beliefs and their values is a no-no. The low uncertainty avoiders are more relaxed, they go with the flow, they accept life as it goes, and I think this is more like this part of society here. The indulgence versus restraint, if we look at these, like the masculinity, tolerance of uncertainty, and indulgence, they go together, especially when it comes to the Japanese society, because it measures how a society allows freedom of gratification. How much will you follow your human drive and just be happy and do what you love? Or is it all about, this is how it's supposed to be, this is how we should plan our life, this is how achievement and success is done. It's all about plan, and being assertive. And so a society with restraint suppresses the gratifications of needs and regulates it with means of strict norms, like the Japanese. And the long-term versus short-term is the extent to which a society shows a pragmatic approach towards a future-oriented perspective. How are you going to plan? Are you good at planning ahead of time? Ahead of time is not next month, but in 10 years' time, 20 years' time. How pragmatic are you in terms of your approach when you want to plan for your future, basically, or future of organization, or even your own life? And these are the 6 dimensions that are on Hofstede's website, and it's a tool that looks like this. I have input 2 countries, and I've chosen Japan on purpose compared to United Kingdom. And you can put up to 4 countries if I'm not mistaken. And you can see clearly here in the scale what I was talking about. The masculinity, Japan has scored really high. They're very assertive and competitive. And they don't like not knowing what is ahead of them. They don't like anything that's unorthodox. They are very well planned. They will not indulge in what they love or think they can just have fun. And they're not individualists, they are a collective society. So they stand up for each other. While if you look at United Kingdom, they score really high on individualism because they don't really, everybody stands for themselves and what they can do in terms of their future. And they're okay with uncertainty. It's okay not to know what's coming ahead. I live my now and maybe tomorrow, day after, and that's not, the rest is not important. And this is mainly about lifestyle. So I will not say it's about the corporation, the way that they work. And this tool is used also to measure when you need to understand a different country if you are planning to open a company in that country. So you will be able to understand that society. So if I'm planning to open, I don't know, anything to do with fun, then it's the wrong idea to open it in Japan, but rather I will go to the UK for that because they're more prone to indulge in it. So the benefits of cultural diversity in the workplace, I'm coming to an end. Diverse talent is important. Increased innovation increases market share because that means having the different kinds of culture, you will be able to understand your market at a better level, and you will have a better business reputation because if you understand the people that work for you, everybody else will actually want to work for you. And it will improve your own cultural insights and it will improve your employee engagement. But you need to pay attention so that it does not just come from one part of the organization. It has to be taken as a holistic approach from top to bottom, right and left. Everybody in the organization needs to understand that there is this cultural diversity plan so that everybody really positively tries to be part of it. And I would like to end this webinar with a quote. When employees respect each other and get along in the workplace, it's amazing how productivity increases, morale increases, and employees are more cautious to customers. Thank you. And these are references. I would like to have a look at any. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Coach, for this very informative session. I do have one question before I hand it over to Riham to get the questions from the attendees. I wanted to ask the way we or the society usually prefers workplaces in Oman here. We prefer or we are keen to have more Omanized workplaces. However, what do you think, or how important is it to have various cultures in leading organizations here in Oman? And what sort of culture maybe?
I've been asked this question before, and I can understand, and I agree 100% about Omanization, because we do have to fill the gap when it comes to employability. But we do have international companies. Hospitals are international because most of the doctors, not most of the doctors, but we have a lot of doctors that come in. We run hotels that are international chains. Our companies are dealing with international branches as well. So it is important one way or another to understand these cultural differences in order for us to be diverse. Sometimes you have cross exchange when it comes to our own employees. You take the oil and gas sector, for example, they are sent outside to complete a certain project for a couple of years. They need to understand this and be able to expect how they can live with the different cultures and societies, so that they will be able to interlink in the right way. I hope that answers your question.
Sort of, yeah. All right, we can hand it over to Riham just for time's sake.
Thank you very much, Qatra Nada. Thank you very much, Coach Nabila. I think it was very interesting and informative presentation. And I think most of us have learned new things, or I can say we have learned the science behind our behaviors. Thank you for that. We will start now, and before we will start with Mr. Simon Karam. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nabila. Excellent. I don't have really many questions. I have comments to make. You see, we know that in the world, there's no geography and mathematics and arithmetics. There's one word. In order to understand it, we analyze. We divide it into things that we could understand, but really we shouldn't forget that it's one unit. If we go to what you presented, there's one unit, it's the iceberg. And if we divide it, we analyze it, then we go into details of awareness, of behavior, of culture. We should not forget that we are one unit. I think the danger of over-analyzing personalities, philosophy, or even science, no, I'm not so sure, but personality may affect the spontaneity, may affect many things. If I may, let me say that you presented, there are two things here. There's individual to individual, and there is group to group. I'm gonna make a sketch, a little sketch. Please don't take it lightly. I am in an office. It is 1,000 square meter office, and there are 6 nationalities. There's a Japanese working, there's a British. Actually, it's a fact. That's what we have in many companies. So when I'm going around, should I change my behavior to understand each one of these guys? Going around, I said, this is Japanese. I must say hello in this manner. But this, I go to the British, I'm casual. But that kills my spontaneity, I think, if we overdo these things. And at the limit, we touch on hypocrisy. So there is a danger there. The second thing, discussing a culture of a nation is also dangerous. Okay, it's useful. We had many people came to explain to us how China people deal, particularly the traders, how we should deal with them. But actually, in my experience, there is no prototype. You cannot find one man who can represent a nation. So your behavior varies with that individual as well. And a last comment, I think that the foundation of culture is to doubt. If we have no doubt, and if we are sure that all what we know or all what we believe in, or what we wear, or the way we talk is the best, and there couldn't be any other, then we miss the point and we will never become cultured. The person who wants to have this attitude must start with a doubt. He should doubt. He must tell himself, what I believe is great, my values is great, but are they the best? Or is there any other option? It starts there. And that commands the behavior, you know. Assume that I'm one of these and I go to Japan, I'll start laughing at everybody who's not like me. So, but overall, it's extremely challenging and brainstorming, you know. It's a field where people like ourselves who know two straight line parallels and right angle, and you know 5 times 5 is 25. It's nice to hear about emotional intelligence, about awareness, and Oman is very rich in a natural way in that. The Omani people have got this talent of accepting the other, whoever they are. And I think this is a blessing from God, and we must keep that. Thank you. Thank you, Nabi.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Simon.
I'm sorry, I have no question, but comments.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Simon. We'll start with some questions. We have Mrs. Amal Talidi. Mrs. Amal, can you hear us? Okay, until she gets ready, Jelena Lager, please go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, Nabila, wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. It was really, really interesting and insightful. And I always very warmly remember our wonderful conversations and debates from Tanfidh with Simon Karam and Sheikh Ahmed Al-Amri, etc. So thank you so much. And you've brought back a lot of happy memories through this presentation this evening. Regarding my question, I'd like to ask you about the Omani labor markets, which of course has multicultural dimensions by virtue of the fact that there's a presence of expatriates here. So how would you suggest that a young Omani coming into the labor market prepares for such a scenario, both from an individual level, and how can the education system help this young Omani to prepare for to be able to cope with this labor market?
In terms of cultural diversity, or just to cope with the...
In general, what to expect, as you were mentioning earlier, your, I believe, niece, who is having trouble with the timing, etc. You know, those kind of things. Just to be able to cope and to hit the ground running, let's say, from a cultural perspective.
Yeah. I actually had a webinar on that yesterday with Maharat Academy on jobs and skills, and we were discussing exactly these skills that they lack. There's a lot of skills that students lack, and that's why they are unemployable. So in order for us, like Mr. Simon was discussing right now, the leadership, the emotional intelligence, the adaptation, flexibility, being able to adapt to change, these are all skills that they lack. They are not used to having all of these different skills because they are spoon-fed in schools. So let alone cultural diversity, but alhamdulillah, as Mr. Simon pointed out, we are naturally accepting people of different cultures. It is our nature. But are we really, we are accepting, but what about our own bias and our prejudices? There are instances where there's a lot of bias and prejudices between different people that we see or how we perceive somebody. And I can give another example on this one. I had a doctor that I visited before, and when I saw that doctor later on, I mean, I respected that doctor, he's educated and all of that, but he was a different nationality, and I would not like to say what nationality, but when I saw him later with his wife in a mall, I thought to myself, wow, if I saw this person at another time, before knowing he was a doctor, I would have just thought he was a common person, not educated, and these are the biases that we carry in our heads. And these are the kind of things that we need to educate our children and the graduates. And they're all actually related to emotional intelligence. I mean, yes, we are accepting different nationalities, but are we really highly emotionally intelligent when it comes to being aware of how we react towards certain situations? These all fall under the umbrella of leadership skills as well. They lack not the hard skills, they lack the soft skills, the transferable skills, and this is how we can prepare them.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the second question from Mr. Khalil Al-Blushi. Please go ahead, Mr. Khalil.
Yeah, thank you, Saad Khalil, Majlis Khonji, for the invitation. Thank you, Nabila, for this interesting talk. It was very interesting for me because I work in shipping, and there were many times when I was at sea on ships where we were up to 9 different nationalities, you know, in a small place. So cultural understanding was very important. But something you said intrigued me to ask this question. What I called clash of cultures had nothing to do with Sira' al-Hadarat and all these big talks. Clash here, sometimes the culture becomes one way. Who should accept the other? Does the concept of in Rome, does like Romans applies when we talk about culture? You gave the example of Korean versus Omanis. And you said the Korean did a mistake by not understanding the Omanis. Was it really their mistake, or the Omanis should have understood them, or they should have come in the middle somewhere? How does it work when it comes to culture? I think you do like, maybe in Rome, you do like Romans, unless it is really in deep-rooted values or religion or something really obviously wrong. So what is your say on that?
So I would, thank you for your question. It's a really good question. When in Rome, I can understand that perspective. And it does make you feel comfortable when you're a part of that culture. When we travel, and sometimes you feel like you want to be part of that culture. So we don't really stick and say, oh, I have to be Omani even when I'm in the UK or the US. But the example, if you see other nationalities come, and I've seen this a lot with other nationalities, when they come here, they will tell them, be careful not to extend your hand to a woman because it is not allowed. You have to ask for her permission. So something as small as this. So maybe if the mistake was, they could have maybe just asked them and say, oh, in our Korean culture, we do this, do you accept? They could have asked them for it, in my opinion, I think. Otherwise, there can be a clash in terms of the two cultures. Why does the United States or the United Kingdom or these other countries, especially when we see with diplomats, why do they tell them, even with just simple organizations, they will tell their employees, do not extend your hand to a woman unless she extends her hand first, because they have studied our culture and they know that the woman here maybe will not give her hand out to you, and it could be disrespectful. So if you think it's not wrong that they were not mistaken, the Koreans, but maybe they should have at least found out and asked, because there was one person who was very religious, and to him, maybe he needed a little bit of culture awareness, but because they were the guests, they should have figured it out. This is my personal opinion anyways.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have another question from Dr. Talal.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Coach Nabila, and to Majlis Khonji for the great session. I have one question. I was just doing some reflection on the education system here in Oman. especially the public education system, not like the private or the international. Maybe just a quick overview about statistics. We have like more than 40% of our public education is based on quite remote villages, either in the mountains or in an area which has limitation in accessibility to the multi cultures. In these scenarios, how can we embed those multicultures and cultural diversity values in area which didn't have the opportunity to have like an international market accessibilities? And the second point, I was just reflection with the comment from Uncle Simon regarding losing the spontaneous dimension in our cultures. Usually we see like an area whether if we are in the maybe isolated from some of the big cities or in the countrysides, we see the spontaneous culture. It is more dominant than the international impact of the corporate. And I mean by the international, not because the national versus international, but I mean by the corporate fingerprint, which has been embedded on us. How we promote this spontaneous behavior as a global values, if I may ask this question. Thank you very much.
Let me understand your question first. Do you mean to say, for example, that because you have remote individuals working from, from the mountains, that they do not get to see these different cultures, so it will be difficult for them to actually mix and understand? And how can you embed it in their education? Is that the question?
Yes, exactly. That's my question.
Yes.
Yes. So I started my career as an early childhood teacher, actually. And during this time when I was teaching children, you would teach children, and this is just about children, but you can do it at any age, is that you embed it in their storybooks. You talk about different cultures. When you're talking about the world, for example, the world map, you can pick. It can be a huge part of the curriculum, like when they're learning about the different countries of the world, and then you pick each part of the world, a country, you teach them about how they act, about how they dress, what is their traditions. It doesn't have to be detailed, like Mr. Simon has pointed out, but it can be very spontaneous, very simple, just so that they can understand that there are different cultures and different societies out there. And it can be implemented in a very interactive way, very fun way. They can go online, given like assignments to search for these different countries. Each student can actually focus on a different country, and they can come back into class and share what they have found, and they can act it out. They don't have to dress like it, but they can make it in terms of paper clothes, and they can wear it and they can act it out and be that different culture, and then say, oh, I'm this culture, I'm Japan, and this is how I act, and this is my tradition, and this is how I say hello, this is how I believe. So it can be done in a very interactive way to learn about the different cultures.
What a great answer. Great question and great answer. Thank you very much.
Coach Nabila, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll take another question from Mrs. Nada Al-Ajmi.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to listen to Nabila all over again, and we enjoyed her talk just a week ago or less than a week ago. And well, let me say something. Badriya Siyabi is somewhere here. And in our talk previously, she mentioned something that she's quiet here, but I would like to quote her. And she pointed out something very interesting. She said, she used the terminology al-khususiyya al-umaniyya. And she said, this is a very common terminology that we use it among ourselves to indicate wherever when we don't want to go further with someone else or someone who's an outsider, or when we don't like to accept an outside idea. And it is a provoking thought for me. And it was a very interesting dialogue that we had in a group of ladies, or a similar session we had before. But one thing that it comes to my mind, and I can relate that to also to the question Dr. Talal raised, which is, in reality, I don't believe that the Omani nation lacks awareness of the existence of other cultures. The Omani nation, we are like, I'm less, yes, I'm brought up in Suhar. I grew up and brought up in Suhar, but from childhood, I knew so much about other cultures. But one thing is, when we come to the Khusus al-Omaniya, it becomes our, like we are, yes, we are different, we're more conservative. This can become a barrier. And one of the solutions is such gatherings. And these gatherings, like, it just opens up ideas to us in how can we contribute more to the society, to think about a broader identity. That's the terminology I'd like to use here, a broader identity that unifies mankind. And while respecting al-khusus al-Umani, al-khususiyya al-Umaniya, or respect that our Umani identity, and really realize that if we listen to other cultures, practice coexistence with other cultures, that does not gonna make us lose our Omani identity, and to eliminate this fear. And this fear will never go away unless in the root of our education, we really, like, focus on abolition of prejudice. We focus on the values of peace, and cultivate such values in our education, and take away fear from our children. It's okay for my child to learn about another religion or another, let's say, culture, and that's fine. And she will not lose her identity. Her identity will become more rich, and that diversity will make her own original identity even shine more. And this is the kind of fundamental values we need to cultivate more in our children. And it starts from that young age. It will be very difficult to change it when we are old. And looking at such a vibrant community where Majlis al-Khonji is, and listening to such conversations, it just indicates how open we are and how we are willing to receive different thoughts and ideas. But the idea is, how can we convey this to the wider society outside as well? And not to exclude it to, let's say, a group of people who have access to Zoom meetings. What other thoughts, what other initiatives we can really take on our shoulders as citizens here, or as people who are living in Oman and who are our brothers and sisters, to build more diverse society and practice the essence of peace and coexistence more deeply.
I would like to add to that. Other countries have exchange, student programs, and I know we have at some point in Oman. But if it can be encouraged even more, then our students, when they do have these exchange programs, they get to live and experience a different nationality, a different culture. They come back, not that they are changed, but they come back with extra education in their hands, which is a different culture and understanding different cultures.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mrs. Nada Al-Ajmi. Actually, we have a request from our guests. We would like to know more about you. If you can introduce yourself, please.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. Well, I've just retired. It's been a year I've retired from SQU. Maybe you heard about me, Dr. Nada Al-Ajmi, who has always been interested in developing women and, you know, promoting the women's cause. But I'm not the kind of, you know, I'm not a feminist, let's put it this way. I'm not a feminist who believes, you know, that extreme, that I always believe that, you know, promoting or developing or empowering women, it's more about really finding the balance in society. So as I've retired, I'm now free for to focus more on my training and consultancy, Aspire Muscat. I can send you the link later in the chat to know more about the kind of philosophy that I have in offering training and consultancy, working with profile assessments, working in developing behavior change in organizations, and passionately love coaching. And I do work with families issues, and let's say I'm just passionate about seeing people grow and change, and you know, and be able to contribute more to their society. So I'm just using, well, my consultancy has been established since 2009, but you know, using the experience of 20 years with SQU, now I have all the time to devote myself to this field. And yes, always academia is my passion, but I always believe academia without work in the field of in the society, it cannot add value. So we cannot, as academics, stay in the theoretical level and write papers in journals only. We really need to make these journals related to the society and add actual value to the people that will live next door to door in our neighborhood.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for having you with us today. We'll have another question from Ms.
Sorry, can I comment, sorry, quickly about what Ms. Nada said?
Sorry, Mr. Khalil?
Can I just have a comment on what Ms. Nada said?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, about the الخصوصية العمانية. It is very clearly in 2040 vision, one of the priorities listed there is citizenship, identity, and national heritage and culture. Not necessarily means we shouldn't have خصوصية العمانية, but it says a society that is proud of its identity and culture and committed to its citizenship. I just wanted to mention this. Thank you.
And definitely, and this does not contradict at all with not to have prejudice. Of course, nobody wants to lose that pride. And that's exactly my point. So it's like, if I'm proud of my culture, I'll be very happy to mix with people to share the values of my culture even more, even further. And that's what I meant. Thank you.
Riham, can I also comment on that, if you don't mind? Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah. The subject of khususiyya is so important. And if we can have a session on that, and the host could be our guest, Nada, that would be great. We have to define what we mean by that khususiyya. What are the traits? What are the characteristics that make that khususiyya? Because many a time in business, khususiyya is a place where we hide behind when we don't want, as you said, where we don't agree, or we don't want to get involved, or we don't want to change. We hide behind it. Despite all the good things, it's good, I think, to analyze that khususiyya, because I think it's a weapon with two sides. Yani sometimes it's something we have to be proud of, and sometimes we hide behind it not to do what is good for us to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the next question from Ms. Lutus Mohajir.
Hi, thank you so much for this very interesting presentation and discussion. I actually had two, one was a comment and one was a question. So my comment was on the previous discussion on how can, the younger generations, for example, be more exposed and broaden their thinking and relate to other people. So I had an experience when I was in university. It was a program where their whole philosophy was you had students from different backgrounds come together, and before even engaging to get to know one another, they would engage in a service project together. So say there was a hurricane somewhere, they would go and fix the broken homes and do something that's of service to the community. And then after that, they would engage in a dialogue to get to know each other better. And the philosophy was that once you work towards something that's greater than you, there's an element of human connection that you have. And then after that, you start to get to know each other and understand each other's culture. So I thought that was an interesting model. I don't know if our speaker has any thoughts on that. And then the second question was, sometimes when we think of it in terms of somebody adapting to the other, it can be a bit limiting. So even though that tends to happen sometimes, but what do you think of this idea of coming together to make sort of a new culture, to which that you keep the best of both sides, but yet that spontaneous mix that we keep talking about happens, and there's a new habits, new parts of the culture, whether it's in a company or a community, are produced, and where you don't lose, as we were saying, the cultures themselves, but there's almost like a synergy of the two cultures. And of course, this isn't easy. So if you've seen this happen successfully, where these two sides come together and a new culture is produced with even better characteristics, what allowed it to happen? What allowed it to work rather than not work and end up with a clash of the different cultures?
Yes, I think with that one is basically it's part of team building as an exercise that brought the different cultures together. So because of bringing together different cultures in a team building exercise, it created diverse talent and diverse minds to work together. So what I have and what you have, if you're a different culture, could be different in terms of how we think, how I process, how I solve problems. It all comes together, and could be a problem in the beginning when there's a clash of trying to understand what everybody is doing, but at the end of it, you start seeing a brighter path when the problem is being solved in a very better way than rather when you have the same kind of mindset. And just like what Dr. Nada was saying, is that because of this khususiyya, and by trying to encourage these kind of embodying these different cultures together, will create a better understanding of the different cultures. And when I mentioned before about the culture baggage, this is what I was actually talking about. So the khususiyya is actually our culture baggage. And it doesn't mean we need to get rid of it, but we need to be aware of it. We have this culture baggage. What is it stopping us from? What is it stopping us from? Is it stopping us from progressing? Is it stopping us from getting to know different cultures? So yes, I agree with team building exercises. Definitely, you get together, you get to understand each other, you learn from each other with the different talents that you have in your hands. And this is why our children who are students abroad come back with a different mindset, with better ideas, with better skills, because they learn the skills and not take from that culture. Rather, you learn different things from that culture, but at the same time, you understand.
Thank you very much. I'll move to the next question from Mr. Haji Adam.
Good evening, and excuse my Omani English, please.
خصوصية ترى. Omani English is خصوصية.
I just have a couple of comments. Regarding your husband's visit to Korea, maybe he didn't tell you the whole story. Normally, when you go to Korea, they gift you with a lady, so that is the culture. They don't feed you. She is yours, and as long as you are there. That's one thing. And I remember, I come maybe from the old generation. In the old days, when I think the British people are the most foxy, can very well camouflage and cultures wherever you go, and I absolutely agree with you. French, Germans, Americans, Russians are all different, but the British are very foxy. They can get into any hole. in the old days, whenever we had officers seconded to the Oman army, they would come with a special guidance and instructions and coaching, and they get subjected to a very good induction course that they are going to Oman, and they have to understand the Omani culture. So they would come here, and then they apply because they know a little bit about our culture. By applying what they were taught, they spoiled us a lot, to be honest. We we talk about the khususiyya, like Simone said, we were taking that khususiyya, the whatever they were taught, for granted. We were getting away with a lot of things, and they taught us a lot of good things. And besides that, we learned a lot of bad things because they were respecting our and our cultures. And one of the beautiful things we used to have before here in Oman, maybe I'm a little bit going away from the subject, before the month of Ramadan, for example, there used to be a very nice circular going around to all expatriates working. Those days, most of them used to be in the army and maybe in PDO, telling people what to do and what not to do in Ramadan. Unfortunately, this has disappeared. We don't see it anymore. We walk now along the beaches, for example, and we see, with respect to all my daughters and sisters and in this group, we see a lot of people, tourists, with exposed postures on the beach, and it's not their problem. I think the problem is that maybe nobody is telling them. And vice versa. Whenever we used to go to a foreign country, it was considered to be, our duty to understand that the country we are going to, we have to understand their culture, and it was for us to respect their culture, not for them to respect my culture, because I am going to their country, so I have to live according to their norms. This is, I think, now missing in Oman, and people like you, Ustad Nabila, I think, has a big role to play in this, to bring this back to Oman. And I absolutely agree with Mr. Simon that when we talk about khususiyya, and I have been a senior executive, and I commanded about 1,000 strong, and it was always easy for me to hide behind the khususiyya whenever I didn't want to do something particular. So I agree with him. Khususiyya is a very broad line that it needs to be specified. My question is, what can we do now? For example, now we have COVID-19. There's a package of guidances and instructions have come from the United Nations to us here. Okay, and in Oman, this problem of the number is increasing and going higher and higher and higher, and a lot of people are asking question, why it's happening? I maybe I'm taking a little bit long on this, but I attended the presentation and one night where there were doctors from Malaysia and doctors from Oman. Malaysia is 32 million at that time. They had only 9,000 infected, and Oman was 52,000 infected. And Malaysia had 120 deaths. And in Oman, we had almost 290 deaths. So is this connected to our culture that we are doing something wrong? Thank you.
Hello.
I will say it's definitely connected to our perception of things when it comes to our culture. How do we perceive health? How do we perceive seriousness of a certain situation? Did people really perceive this as being serious, or did they take it as istihtar, as we keep on hearing it? I'm a COVID-19 survivor, by the way, and I don't know where I got it from, because I was 100% careful and careful. In fact, the first few months I did not go out at all, did not visit anybody. When I recovered, and after the shops have opened, I visited one store, and I started asking them, because it's a store that I normally visit, and I asked them, how are you feeling? Have you any of you been, are you all safe from the virus? And he replied to me saying, it's just a flu. People get it and they get well. So this is a perception that they think it's just a flu. Why? Because they have seen people who have been infected by the virus and got better, but they don't see further. Remember the long-term versus short-term, being pragmatic about situations. This is similar to that as well on that dimension, because they cannot really see the severance of the situation. They only see what they have seen in front of them. They don't look ahead of time. How did we handle this situation is a different issue. We should know our own Omani culture and Omani people that, and how they perceive things. Maybe if we were in lockdown, 100% curfew for 2 weeks, this wouldn't have reached to where it was today. Because I think people need to be locked in for the virus to go away, unfortunately. It is about the mindset of people.
I think, you know, we talk about masking people and we talk about lockdown and isolating, social distancing. But when it takes me back to our society, you know, 10 or 15 eating from one plate. And we still see sometime washing the same bowl. And so this is Socia. Maybe people don't want to talk about it. You know, our health system is, I think, one of the best in the area. And we did very well with our lockdown. We blame the expatriates, that, you know, the laborers are on the lowest side. But we still, when we meet together, we still eat from the same plate and we eat that with our hand. So this is the khususiyya, you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haji. Before we move to the last question from Mr. Ahmed Al-Amri, we have a comment from Elena. Please go ahead.
Yeah, forgive my pronunciation. I'd like to make a comment about the khususiyya Omaniya. So if we're going to take this forward and have a session on that, I think it might be very interesting to know what are the key things that you as Omani citizens would feel to be important for foreigners to know. What are the key points about your culture that you would like to convey, especially because in the Vision 2040 culture is still very, very deeply embedded and it's not going to go away. So I think it'd be really interesting to have a conversation about what are the things you want foreigners to know. I was born an expat, I've lived here for a number of years, and I love your culture very much, but there's still many things that are mystery to me. And I think that would be really, really interesting to kind of have a better insight to that. And also for people coming in with the best of intentions, to have a better overview of what is expected and how to act in a culturally appropriate way that would be appreciated by the national population.
Thank you, Helena. I think we should take, and everyone who has commented on the khususiyya al-Omaniyya because of Badriya, I think, Sihabi. I take it very positive. And I think many proud nations, they have Scottish people, British people. We always, you know, Dutch, Korean, Japanese, they have their own, you know, restriction, and definitely they have their own, like, you know, ta'min. We have ta'min. Also, you know, different countries, they have different. So we should take it positive, and we should be proud that we are unified in many aspects. And we accept people. So this is also khususiyya Omaniyya, which is good. You know, we are Omani Dishdasha, proper, you know, uniform for ladies. We respect all kind of this one. So this is also khususiyya Omaniyya compared to other GCC, where, you know, all the women, they wear the same thing. So for us as men, we wear, you know, we have the same Dishdasha and so on. So, you know, we don't have half, you know, different dresses. Anyway, I just wanted to comment, but it's good to to maybe you can dig on this and do some research, and you can be our speaker because you are half Omani as well. Yeah, thank you. I think Ahmed Al-Amri has the last question before we end. Tafadhal, Sheikh Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Nabila, thank you very much for a very informative and knowledgeable lecture. And we had a good days at Tanfeed time. You were as creative as I see you today. Not only proud of you as a cousin, but also as a very leading figure in Oman, in our society. Going back to your culture, to your lecture, sorry, talking about culture and the culture shock and differences and so on. You got us too deep in details, and I started to see that.
Sheikh Ahmed,
yes.
اتحفنا بالعربية يا أخي على النهاية تعبنا.
There are others who cannot speak Arabic, I think, who not understand the Arabic.
Only Helena. Okay, okay.
Okay, and this is part of the Khususiyya Al-Umaniyya, and we respect the. And I have something to say about Khususiyya Al-Umaniyya. But back into this, as I said, we got so deep into the details when almost we saw the devil there, that made me feel like from after this lecture, I should walk on a very thin ice when dealing with people and have to be very careful and considerate. But when I come back to myself, I say, we are like this as Omanis. We are considerate. We are well-mannered when we behave with others. It doesn't really touch us so much that if others misunderstand us, and we do forgive if somebody does. But in the contrary, there are others who does not really are well informed when they arrive in Oman how to behave or how to conduct and deal in business or in Souq Matrah, for example, or anywhere else. So the way I look at it is we just be you when you deal with people. And when there is something crossed between your culture and theirs, we are human enough to come to a common understanding and not make it such an issue that we create a war about it. This is my opinion on the whole issue. Going back to the Khususiyya Al-Umaniyya, within the Khususiyya Al-Umaniyya, we mixed up three things: the nationalism and national identity. They are two different things. The first person who spoke about Khususiyya Al-Umaniyya was His Majesty late Sultan Qaboos, when the first students going overseas. And I remember there's a video we saw on WhatsApp speaking to various students in Madrasa Saidiyya in Salalah back in early 70s. When he spoke about the Khususiyya Al-Umaniyya in that day, he meant for the students when they go abroad not to be a copy of others blindly. And he specifically said, take what's good and leave what is bad, be selective. So don't be, that's what the Khususiyya is about. But later on, the Khususiyya Al-Umaniyya is blown out of proportion and it became in everything. And one of them, as Ammu Saymoun Abu Karim قال, and something is we hide behind sometimes when we don't want to cross over to others. And sometimes it's like something we hang our problems on. When we say, Wallahi hada Khususiyya Al-Umaniyya. Personally, till date, I don't know what does it mean, Khususiyya Al-Umaniyya, in economics or in social context or in politics. Or maybe in politics, I know it's Khususiyya Al-Umaniyya Al-Hiyad.
In professions, in employment.
In employment, we got it involved, but I think the original definition of it is not to become an Omani, not to become a copy of others blindly. Keep your identity, be proud of your heritage, but that does not stop you of crossing and learning from others' cultures. Thank you very much, and I really thoroughly enjoyed this evening, And I hope we see more of these kind of lectures. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and I'd like to thank Coach Nabila again. I think my experience in going to a boarding school really added to understanding deeper from a very young age different cultures, and this is why I encouraged others to pursue this. Like you said, team building exercises might help this, but actually getting an opportunity to interact with various different cultures on a day-to-day really broadens this experience. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. I would like to end this by saying that the whole idea about this cultural diversity webinar is because we have different nationalities working still amongst our organizations, and they do have different perceptions, like the timing perceptions and the other diverse attitudes that they have in behavior. So if we are able to understand, so it's not about us changing or just being a different culture, but if we can understand their perspective, then we can actually train them to work better in our environment and make them more happier in our companies, you know, with a better attitude, to be able to understand where we're coming from, to understand al-khususiyya al-Omaniyya, to understand all the behaviors, and we can understand why they behave in a certain way and what are their real values that made them behave in that certain way, so that we can create these positive collaborations between teams and, you know, departments and the whole organization. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Nabila, just before you end, if I just highlight something. When we talk about now in our organizations in Oman, especially in the private sector, the work environment and the culture within these organizations is hardly you can call it an Omani khususiyya or an Omani culture work. We have lots of expats who influence the organizations with their culture, and then Omani employees sometimes need to comply with these attitudes and this work environment. So if we had an organization which is 100% Arabic or Omani culture environment, work environment, then yes, as what you said, we have to train them to make them adapt to the culture of this organization. But it's the other way around.
Yes, it's not about us. I'm not saying that the Omani culture is the one that we have to give to those who come here. I'm saying that we need to understand each other's culture so that we can learn to collaborate with each other.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. I think we have reached to the end of our session today. It was really a wonderful session. Thank you all, and have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bravo.
شكرا يا أبو عبد الله.
شكرا جزيلا. شكرا لكم.